Espresso is the story of the development of a technology that ended up being tasty. Let's look at espresso's recipe. It consists of really hot water, but not boiling, forced through a puck of finely ground coffee at a pressure of 9 atmospheres, that is a lot, to extract about an ounce of liquid. Espresso extracts all the flavors from the coffee and makes a concentrated and intense coffee. The thing is, espresso wasn't developed by someone trying to make the best possible cup of coffee. Espresso was developed to solve the problem of how to produce a cup of coffee quickly in order to sell more coffee. Meet Angelo Moriondo of Turin, Italy. He recognized the problem and came up with a way of making coffee quick. And in 1884, he was granted a patent for new steam machinery for the economic and instantaneous confection of coffee beverage, a device that would eventually lead to the creation of espresso. The dude was steampunk. Looking at this patent, definitely steampunk. In 1905, Luigi Bizzarra, a maker of liqueurs, what a title, created the single-shot espresso machine. Bizzarra introduced the portafilter, multiple brew heads, and other innovations that are still found on modern espresso machines. However, Bizzarra's machine used a gas-fired flame, and it was nearly impossible to produce consistent shots of espresso. In 1905, Desiderio Pavoni began working with and later bought out Bizzarra to develop the early espresso machines into something closer to today's models. This resulted in the La Pavoni Idele. Hey, I've got a La Pavoni too. While the early machines could produce 1,000 cups of coffee per hour, they still used steam to push the water through the coffee at a much lower pressure, and this resulted in a bitter cup of coffee. In 1948, Achille Gaggia created the Gaggia Classica, which solved the pressure problem by using a lever-powered piston that produced 9 atmospheres of pressure and also controlled the amount of water that passed through the coffee. This combination finally produced a strong drink with the brown foam, aka crema, and thus began the pulling of a shot of espresso. But coffee is more than a beverage. Many times it's a social event, which leads us to the coffee house, where people gather to socialize and enjoy the espresso. Coffee houses have been around for a very long time, granted not making espressos. Bach had a favorite coffee house, Café Zimmermann, and even wrote a coffee cantata, something like a really short opera. This singer is lamenting what would happen to her without her coffee. She's got a serious caffeine addiction.
My name is Nate Rhodes. I'm the owner of Hopscotch Coffee and Records. I was seeking out places to find good coffee and kind of ended up working in coffee. It might even started earlier when I was working in videography and stuff for a local record label. I would be traveling a lot, so started carrying my own sort of road kit, I guess, to start making it on the road. So that kind of got me into, I guess, maybe the love of making coffee. Yeah, you know, everybody's welcome here. I mean, I want anybody that comes through the door to feel just like the next guy and have a wonderful cup of coffee, place to relax. You know, we've got a couple of different areas here, so some are a little more cozier than others, some are a little livelier. You know, we also wanted to be, that was another reason we picked this location was, we wanted to be somewhere in the middle of Winchester, like Old Town area, but also we wanted to be close to the university because, we felt that we wanted to get more Shenandoah students, out here as well. Students come here and study, faculty comes here and does paperwork or office, We have one guy that calls this his coffee office, I guess, so he comes and hangs out and does whatever he needs to do, It's making coffee is the fun part, I guess, I mean, or even, you know, drinking it myself. We have to do a lot of quality control, a lot of tasting coffee. So that's, you know, that's a very fun thing to do until you've had too much caffeine, and then it could not be so much fun. But, you know, it's enjoy talking to people, love seeing people come back and, you know, repeat customers and getting to know those people and knowing their drinks, you know, having those, you know, ready before they're even through the door sometimes, you know, if we see them coming. You know, different places to appeal for people, because not everybody wants to hang out in the same sort of atmosphere. You know, and that's a big part of a coffee shop too, is atmosphere. I'm gonna pull a real quick shot here to kind of dial in on the espresso, see where I'm at. Something that every good barista should probably be doing throughout their day, or start of their day, middle of the day. And, you know, it's just tasting, seeing, smelling it. See where we're at. It's like most people don't know that throughout the day there's many things that could be changing that will affect your espresso. Temperature, humidity, things like that. So you always want to be looking out for stuff like that throughout the day. Because it might be pulling a little slower, a little faster than normal. So you always keep an eye on that. Then you make some small adjustments. So right now I just dosed my espresso. About 18 grams. Distribute it. Tamp it. Put it in the group head. Gauge the group head. And got some beautiful espresso happening. There we go.
Lovely. Lovely. Good morning, folks, and welcome to my morning espresso ritual. My name's Kevin Nealon, and I'm going to make an espresso for you. So, there are 4 things you need to make espresso. Water, that's obvious. The other thing is fresh coffee. Yeah, don't get coffee from the supermarket. Always go to a local roaster. I have some Hopscotch and Records coffee here, because you don't want to get coffee that's more than 2 weeks old, and you don't want to buy more than 2 weeks of coffee at a time. Why? Because it's a perishable thing. What makes coffee yummy is organic compounds that are also volatile. So they either evaporate or combine with air and become something less than yummy. And in fact, all roasters will put a roast date on the bag somewhere. So we have coffee. The other thing we have or need is heat. Now, my weapon of choice here for making espresso, and it's a questionable choice, is a La Pavone Europacal. And the trick here is I have to keep this brew head here at the right temperature. I've actually deliberately overfilled it because I'm going to preheat that by running a cup of water through it. And I can also use the water to heat my cup. Now, the next thing you need to make espresso is pressure. And the way you control the pressure is through the fineness of the grind of your coffee. So you have to use a really good grinder for this. I've got Baratza Encore here, and just to let you also know, we're talking a fair amount of expense here. The EuropaCal New is like $900. I eBayed this for something over $5. This guy's $140. So there's an upfront cost. But pretty much every time I pull this lever, I'm saving about $4. So it'll pay off if you can master it. So I don't have a scale. I do everything by touch and feel. For instance, I know that if I run this thing for about 12 seconds, I fill the basket that'll hold the coffee just about right. So, 1, 2.
12 seconds later.
So I have a little wooden bowl here, the basket, and I'm just gonna dump the coffee into it. And tamper. And basically when I rest the tamper on the coffee, I want it to be just a little below the top of the basket. This is actually just a smidge full. And then press down and it should drop another 1/8 of an inch. So, basket, you've now created, and you notice I turned it a little bit. That's because I want to put a, if you will, a polish on the thing. The idea is to get the water to go through the coffee evenly. So I'm gonna put mine into a little Demitasse cup so you can see what I'm pulling here. But we're pretty much all ready to go. And let's have a little countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7. The idea here is to pre-infuse the coffee. 5, 4,
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. It's fucking heavy.
and I'm putting a little bit of force into it, as you can see. And what you want, you know, you're getting a pretty good pull here if you get a couple of mouse tails coming out of the spigot. Don't get too hung up on the foam, or crema as they like to call it. That's a good sign that you're extracting the coffee well, but it's not an indication that it's going to taste good. I'm going to, because that's a double basket, I'm going to give it another little short stroke there. That don't look bad, do it? So, dump the hot water. I'm going to let that finish dripping. So, frothing, yes. So, has to be a metal pitcher. Why? Because you're going to put your finger on the bottom, and when it gets uncomfortably hot, it's time to stop frothing, because at that point you're getting close to boiling the milk. Frothing takes some practice too. The idea is just to have it almost breaking the surface of the milk. Put the frothing wand in first, then turn it on. And you listen for it as well as watch it. So, pour that in. Now, I tell you one thing that a coffee shop has me beat at is I can't make the fancy pouring art, but I'm not sure I care to. I like a little extra foam on top. So there we have a homemade espresso, but as they say, the proof is in the tasting. I can begin my day now, and I hope you enjoy yours.